Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone, both here and who may be watching on cable TV. Welcome to this special June 2nd, 2015 meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. Before I go any further, am I coming through okay in the? Okay. I would ask our technical people to see if we can't get the volume up a little bit more. Is this any better? Okay. Well, then I will talk more loudly than I normally do. Okay. I'd like to introduce the members of the commission who are here. To my far right, to your left, is Tim Henry. To my immediate right is Commissioner Berg. To my left is Commissioner Culbertson. We do expect Commissioner Cushman as well, so I would hope that he'll be here momentarily. But suffice it to say, we do have a quorum, and so that we can proceed. From city staff this evening, we have Kathy Zerniak, the Director of Community Development. And our first and only item before us this evening is the continued public hearing of the Laurel and Western Avenues redevelopment. The commission has been considering this matter since December 2014, and we've had several meetings starting then and in tonight's meeting as well. So we're going to have a public hearing this evening, and then we'll have, as a part of that, obviously, a lot of public testimony. But to start it off, I would ask whether members of the commission have had any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest on this matter. Okay, seeing none, we will proceed. For those of you who wish to testify and have not testified before on this matter, I'd like to have you please stand, and I will swear you in. Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give or may have given before is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll proceed then, go to our regular order of business. Petitioner presentation, not to exceed 20 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Christine Cobb, and on behalf of Focus Development and our design team, we appreciate the opportunity to present tonight. We're back before the Plan Commission this evening, seeking approval on the preliminary site plan and plat of subdivision for redevelopment of the former municipal services site. We originally introduced the plan in December and have been responding to and incorporating feedback from members of the Community and Plan Commission in each subsequent revision to the site plan. After our December introduction, we returned with a plan. Yes. After our December, I'll keep going. Can you hear me? Okay. We originally introduced the plan in December and have been responding to and incorporating feedback from the Plan Commission and members of the community in each iteration of the site plan that we've submitted since then. This is the site plan we submitted in December. When we returned to the Plan Commission in March, we had made changes to the site plan, including relocating ramp facilities from Laurel and Franklin Place onto Western Avenue in the interior of the site. We had preserved the streetscape along Franklin Place in lieu of adding additional parking. And we had also adjusted the look and character of the path that carried through the site from Franklin to Laurel. Then, based on feedback we heard in March, when we returned in April, We provided a capped interior lane instead of having the through street connect to Franklin. And we also began playing with different heights to know, recognizing that 4 stories was a challenge. We wanted to try to meet the community at a place where we could compromise. After the April meeting, we returned in May with the last Plan Commission hearing with a site plan that had only 3-story buildings, so we did away entirely with the 4 stories. In addition to preserving the streetscape on Franklin, we preserved the streetscape, the existing streetscape on Laurel as well. And we also reduced the amount of units we had from 118 to 114. We made these changes and many others along the way throughout this process. Several themes have emerged from public testimony and the Plan Commissioner's input that we sought to address in the site plan that we will present this evening. A desire to preserve Franklin Park and recreate the Farwell berm, a preference for connecting the interior lane here over and with Western, and the need to reduce height, bulk, and scale of the apartments. We're very happy to present tonight a beautiful plan that addresses these lingering concerns while preserving the economics and viability of the development. This is the site plan that we're presenting this evening. At the last Plan Commission meeting, we provided a sketch that showed what an option could look like for exiting the interior road onto Western, and we've pursued that intent in this latest site plan. It maintains the concept of community connectivity that was expressed in the RFP, and it also directly addresses community and Plan Commissioner feedback to feed traffic to Western Avenue. As others have said, all roads lead to Western. We've also eliminated the 4 stories for the apartments and broken the longer 70-unit apartment building down into 2 buildings. So instead of 2 apartment buildings, there are now 3. And we've reduced the number of units to 110. By providing smaller, more intimate buildings, we are addressing the concerns about the length, the mass, and the scale of the apartments to make the buildings less monolithic, but also achieve an opening of the site to the street. So we're creating view corridors as you move up and down Western, instead of having a long building along Franklin and a long building along Western. The streetscape is now broken up. So as people are coming north on Western, they can see into the site at intervals. We've retained on-site leasing and management by going to a smaller amenity clubhouse that's located within the building on the east side, far east side of the site. And we've been able to reduce our units to 110 by integrating that previously standalone amenity building into one of the residential buildings. The smaller building along Franklin Place has enabled us to preserve almost all of Franklin Park. We know that this is important to the community, and we thought that this was an excellent solution. The 3 stories for the apartments provides us to retain and improve that area. The park will be reimagined, but many of the principles that you currently see there will be maintained, and that open space will be maintained, which is critical. Another nice thing about Franklin Park is that it's able to anchor these 2 buildings. So the main gable that's on the center apartment building will be centered on Franklin, as will the Franklin apartment building on Franklin Park. Finally, we've reintroduced the concept of Farwell berm to define the northwest corner of the site. We understand the berm was originally provided to shield the community from trucks, noise, and activities of the municipal services site. The current berm is structurally supported by retaining walls. Here's a couple photos you can see. I believe this is close to an 8-foot wall that's supporting the berm. And although this is a little dark, this is the building foundation that's holding up the berm along the western portion of the site. There's also several points of chemical contamination along the berm that would have to be remediated along with the site. So parts of the berm will be compromised when the environmental remediation occurs, and parts of the berm will be compromised with the demolition of buildings. However, our goal is to reconfigure the berm in a more intentional way that maintains the benefits it has for screening the neighbors and benefiting the neighborhood. There are some key features that I want to show a couple photos of what we're hoping to express that you see in the revised site plan. The first is the boulevard expression of the central lane. This is going to be a really beautiful, similar to this, with a line of trees and a lay of trees in the middle, and on either side of the road, 12-foot roadways, a very intimate setting. So although we went from previously a two-lane, intimate lane, two-directional intimate street, we're now with the boulevard expression introducing more trees and able to better shield the west side of the development from the east side of the development and provide greenery. There are also key spots around the site where we're looking forward to providing a sense of placemaking and very intentional design and landscaping. The first is the southeast corner of the site, where we're hoping to have a small hardscape seating area, some retaining walls, some plantings, a nice place where if you're waiting for a table at the grill, you can cross the street and wait on the corner of the site. And then throughout the site, both on the entries to the access roads to the single-family cluster homes, as well as the the arched entryways to the site. Right down here. We're looking forward to providing some nice signage, small, really intimate, communicate the personality of the development, perhaps some stone or brick entry pillars, something to really identify the area and mark it as an important place in the development. Under the last site plan, the Plan Commission endorsed a through street to Franklin. And in this site plan, since we provided access onto Western, we did not provide the through street to Franklin. We think that moving the traffic through the site and onto Western is sufficient to provide vehicular access. But of course, we wanted to provide some alternatives for the Plan Commission to consider this evening. The first is vehicular access that would continue the expression of the boulevard further north and punch through onto Franklin. There's some challenges with this. We'd have to move Building C further east, so we would be able to preserve less of Franklin Park, but it is feasible from a design standpoint. Another challenge is with maintaining the berm or reimagining the berm here, there'll be some grading changes that we can overcome. We're confident we can overcome. But again, our preference is to come in north through the site and then move east over and exit onto Western Avenue. An alternative to the vehicle access is just providing pedestrian access, so that you can see in this sketch that as the sidewalk comes in this area of the site, we could just pick it up right on the other side. Small amount of mounding on either side to navigate the berm, and we would be able to have pedestrian access through with this portion of the site. Our preference as the plan is submitted, since the through street is responsive, since our solution we feel is responsive to neighbors who are concerned about traffic coming up and down, cutting through that area to either Franklin or Laurel. But these are two alternatives that we wanted to pose to the Plan Commission this evening. We're still maintaining a mix of residential options. Our site plan now has 110 apartment units, which brings our total units on site to 164. And we're able to meet all parking requirements with the interior parking of the site, where we have 307 spots that are required. 307 spots that are required, and we're providing 84, we're providing 267 underground, which is 10 spots in excess of the total required residential parking, 22 guest spots along the interior boulevards, 10 extra spots underground, and we have an opportunity to land bank. Nearly every parallel spot that you see on the interior boulevard could be turned 90 degrees to a perpendicular spot and provide upwards of 40 more spots. Again, we feel that the plan that we're putting forward today meets the needs that we're projecting for the site to park any guests and residents that are created as a result of the development. And it does not include the 17 additional spots that we'll be building on Western. And then just quickly to revisit density. With our new unit count, we wanted to revise this slide, and we've blown up a map of the Western corridor to give members of the Plan Commission and community some context for evaluating density and building size relative to our neighbors in the area. We're currently overall just over 15 units per acre, which is far beneath some of the larger developments to our north and south. And when you break the development down to its single family and multifamily components, we're still beneath or in line with developments of similar multifamily developments in the area. And that summarizes all of the comments we have for this evening. We look forward to answering questions from the community and Plan Commission.
Okay. Kathy, any comments from staff?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Lay. I'd like to cover just a few things. I would like to review where we are in the process. I'd like to speak briefly to the comprehensive plan, since that was raised in some of your correspondence, and then comment briefly on the revised plan. Sure. This plan is before the Plan Commission for consideration of tentative plat approval and tentative site plan approval. This is one part of the process, similar to all subdivisions you see. There is a tentative phase and a final phase. The Plan Commission's focus is on the land use plan. The Building Review Board will be involved in this review. They will consider the architectural aspects of the building, landscape, hardscape, and lighting. Both the Plan Commission and Building Review Board are recommending bodies to the City Council. Once the Plan Commission votes on a recommendation to the City Council, the tentative plat and tentative site plan will go before the City Council for their direction. If the City Council grants tentative approval, again, as occurs with all subdivisions, that will really be assigned to the developer to proceed with further technical studies, finalizing engineering plans, and really get into intensive design development for all aspects of the project. So tonight is not the right time for you to see elevations. You saw some concepts before, but that's why you don't have additional elevations in your packet. We're really now working through the site plan. So I just wanted to remind you, we are in the tentative phase. As this moves forward, the Plan Commission will again see the overall package for final consideration before the City Council takes final action. I did provide, again, in response to some information that was provided in your testimony, a page out of the comprehensive plan. On the right side of the page is a simple graphic of this site. And in 1998, when the comprehensive plan for this area was last adopted, there was a move from the original designation for this site, which was commercial and office on the 3 acres at the corner of Laurel and Western, and the rest multifamily, to all multifamily. The comp plan designation does call for a park at the northeast corner of the property. That is Franklin Park. You do have a plan in front of you that shows that open space. Although the comprehensive plan doesn't designate a similar small park at the southwest corner of the property, one is provided as part of this plan. So the comprehensive plan designates this site overall for multifamily. The plan you have in front of you actually provides single family on the west side of the property and moves to multifamily. So this plan is consistent with and actually provides a lower density, lower type of development, and additional park space beyond what was originally envisioned for this site as it was redeveloped. Finally, just a few comments without getting into the details that Ms. Cobb already reviewed on the revised plan. The revised plan you have in front of you does respond to the development parameters. In some cases, there has been some pullback from the parameters. The development parameters, you will recall, actually allowed for consideration of a 4-story building. You no longer have a plan in front of you that presents a 4-story building. The plan also responds to written, verbal, and graphic testimony that you have received. And I think it is important to remember that the site plan is really a balance between a variety of interests. The developer certainly has to look at the plan from the perspective of making sure it's financially feasible, making sure it's constructible, and making sure that it's marketable. So the Plan Commission really, as you always do, you're balancing a whole variety of interests. And if you choose to do so tonight, this is the 5th time, the 5th meeting that you are hearing this petition. So if you choose to do so, it would be appropriate to forward your recommendation, whatever that may be, to the City Council with respect to the tentative plat and the tentative site plan. You have some conditions recommended in the staff report. I will hold my comments on those until after public testimony. It certainly would be appropriate for the Commission to modify those or expand upon those as you see fit. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. I would then move to questions or requests for clarification from Commission to either the petitioner or staff. Gentlemen?
I have a question, both to staff and to the petitioner. It was mentioned that in order to facilitate a through street to Franklin Place, you would have to move the apartment building to the east. Is there any other way that might be done by shifting the road slightly to the west? Is there any wiggle room with these single-family units that might make that a possibility as one way to, in essence, get that road to have enough room? Have you looked at that?
We looked at that. The expression, it seemed a little awkward that the street would be continuous with with trees everywhere and then kind of duck over a couple feet to.
No, I meant take the whole road and shift it to the west.
No, we haven't looked at that. Where we placed the road was reflective of the existing curb cut today.
Yeah, because there is an awful lot of room, I think, up to that tree. And you do have some reasonable amounts of room to the side yards of those houses. I mean, that way you keep Franklin Place and you're just shifting the whole road. And in essence, you're not, taking away something that you've given to that corner,
We placed the homes along the western lot line to try to be respectful of the neighbors to the west and then to maintain a reasonable setback for the eventual homeowners for the single-family homes. We could certainly look at that. We did put some thought into the placement of those relative to centering them on the tree and being respectful of the western lot line.
Okay, that's okay for now.
Tim?
I have a quick question. On the proposed Central Lane Boulevard, looks kind of narrow, and you have trees shown planted there. Is it your thinking that those trees will remain healthy? They could survive in such a tight space?
Yes, Mariani will be able, we're working with Mariani Landscape, and they'd be able to give us the right type of tree to use in that area, make sure that there's enough width to maintain a healthy tree and that there's space for that tree to grow. But yes, right now I believe it's 12-foot street on either side of the boulevard, a 4-foot drivable curb on either side of the boulevard, and then I think it's about 10 feet in the center. 16, that center area is 16 feet.
Okay, thank you. One other question. You have, you've gone from originally 118 rental units, and now I believe you're at 110. The total number of units is down from, what was it, 172 to something around? 164. Right. Okay. I seem to remember at some point, the comment was made that you couldn't really go lower than your previous unit numbers and sustain the financial viability of the project. How has your thinking changed on that?
The reason that we've been able to further reduce units is that we are no longer building a standalone high-end amenity center on the site, and the cost savings that we'll have from that will help support the overall economics of the apartment. So by absorbing that standalone amenity center into the building on the center building of the apartment, we were able to come down a couple units, which we knew was important to the community and you all.
Thank you. That's all I have now.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, I know that, according to what Kathy said, you don't have elevations tonight, but refresh our memories as to what the effect of bringing it down to maximum of 3 stories may have on the overall, I mean, we heard a lot of public input on suggesting we adhere to 35 feet. But at the same time, you're proposing 9-foot ceilings in the luxury apartments and condos, which, in my mind, justifies perhaps taking it up as high as 38 to 40. Can you speak to us generally about, and you haven't gone through the design, and I know you don't know how much fill you're going to have relative to depth, you'd have to dig the parking space, underground parking.
That's right.
Where do you think we are likely to, after, and I know you haven't gone through the BRB, but are you likely to end up?
To land. Well, right now, the site as it currently exists has about a 9-foot grade change over the site. And that does not include the berm, which at times goes up to 12 feet. So there's a significant amount of grading changes on the existing site that we would want to reconcile by bringing the site up to 1 level area. We would need to meet existing points of grade on all the street tie-ins. So where we're proposing a connection to Western and to Laurel, we would need to be down at the grade that those streets are currently and at the corner. So our goal is to find a grading strategy that can accommodate reconciliation of the significant grading changes on the site today. And at the same time, be mindful of kind of feeding into the neighborhood and doing that with some sense of a gradual change. Since all the buildings are now down to 3 stories, they will all be about, from final grade to parapet, approximately 36 feet, somewhere around there. And the height from final grade to gable would be about 49. So the roof expression is what's what's still lending these buildings some height to them relative to our neighbors. And we're looking forward to work with the Building Review Board on what type of roof expressions they think would be appropriate and exploring that.
Well, what would you think if the commission, as a condition, provided a not to exceed height that we would like you to shoot for? Is that something that would make sense?
Possibly, I think something like that's difficult without knowing the type of information and feedback we're going to get from the Building Review Board.
Okay.
We've heard from people that the flat roof expression is not something that they think is appropriate as we strive to achieve a very important, significant landmark development for the area, that they want something that has some architectural expression to it, to the
Sure.
roof. But, it's,
Okay,
we'll leave it
thank
to
you.
your discretion.
Another question is, one of the things that constantly seems to be now coming up in the most recent written testimony or public input that we've had is the 3 to 5 year construction period that that people seem to be concerned about. Could you, I know, and we heard last meeting that you talked about where you said that you would expect about a 12 to 18 month from shovel in the ground occupancy of the apartments. What about a condition that, and then also I saw in some of the materials you had provided that it might take up to a total of 5 years to absorb all the single-family housing.
Right.
Is that still what you think is the likely build-out, or could that be shortened in response to the concern that people are going to have construction trucks, going in and out of the site for four
Sure.
or more years?
Yes. Well, let me respond to that. So the apartments are really the easiest piece of this development in terms of buildability and feasibility. You can get the financing up front and begin construction. There's no requirement for pre-sales or pre-leases. You can really just obtain financing and go. And that's why that window is so short for the apartments. And it would probably be, as we said previously, 12 to 18 months, possibly shorter, 12 to 15 months. So the apartments aren't really the thing that's causing the lag in construction period. It's really the single family and the for sale product. And that's because in order to obtain construction financing, you have to first achieve a set amount of pre-sold units, whether that's 50% or 40 or 60. It gets negotiated with the construction lender for the for sale product. So if we could get the financing today, we'd build it as soon as we could. Our goal is to have a completed site. It's really difficult to ascribe timeframes to these things, given that so much of the risk we can't control. So I would say we will work our tails off to get this built as soon as possible. And I think 5 years sounds pretty long. We'd probably be done in probably 2 to 3 years with construction if the market keeps up and everything goes according to plan.
Okay.
And that's just construction. Absorption, I believe Gail told us last time that we would be absorbed for the apartments within about a year and a quarter. And it's really, again, the for sale piece that is a little riskier because it's all contingent on market dynamics.
Sure. Okay. My last question is, what is the minimum number of apartments that would be required to support a professional on-site management capability here? Are we there at the 110, or is there?
In this case, with 110 units, we're there.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions?
Yeah, I have another question. Staff has a recommendation for a north-south pedestrian connection from Franklin Place to Laurel Avenue. If that were to be installed, where do you see that happening? Where would you?
So right now we have a sidewalk that's, you can faintly see beneath the trees, that trails up the entire north-south lane as it stands. Mm-hmm. And we could jog this over to facilitate a connection here and just rework some of the loading and logistics that we have planned for that area to facilitate pedestrian access throughout the site.
Okay. Kathy, with regard to that recommendation in the staff report for the north-south link from Laurel to Franklin, where was some of the considerations for locating that? Was that something that you actually wanted to see along the street on the western side of the new street?
As far as the pedestrian connection?
Yes.
I think we were open, but it seems like throughout the discussion and certainly in the development parameters, there was an intent to try and integrate this development with the surrounding neighborhood. So from a design perspective, we would really rely on Focus's project team. I will comment that there also is a recommendation that the street connection to Franklin be explored And I can tell you how staff came to that recommendation. We certainly heard from, I believe it was a majority of the Plan Commission at your last meeting, so we wanted to respond to that. We also saw the graphic provided by some of the neighbors, which also supported that connection. From a staff perspective, police, fire, city engineering, and planning staff, we believe it is logical to make that connection, but not having that connection, now that there is an east-west connection, is certainly acceptable. So I think from the staff perspective, logically, and from a planning perspective, the full street connection makes sense, but it's workable either way from our perspective. Looking to the commission for direction.
And we'd be happy to provide that pedestrian access.
Okay, I'm okay for now.
Okay. Further questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your testimony. At this point, we'll turn to the public hearing, and we have quite a number of registrants, and I would expect there'll be people who wish to testify who have not provided slips. Just a reminder of ground rules here. All previous testimony to date, oral and written, is part of the record and has been considered by the commission and need not be repeated. And related to that, I think that comments would be most pertinent and relevant on the revised plan we have before us, not previous plans that have been submitted. Each speaker will have up to 5 minutes to speak, and we will be timing. And if your comments have already been stated by another speaker, you can simply state your agreement with those previous comments. There is no need to repeat them. Also, I request again that you please be respectful of other speakers and all points of view. Please refrain from clapping or booing other speakers, okay? Because I would expect, in looking at the list, we will have some folks that will provide that opportunity, but I would respectfully request that you refrain from doing so. Okay, the first registrant that I have is Harry Lamberson, 1024 Northwestern Avenue. And following Mr. Lamberson will be John Capstick.
Thank you, Commissioner Lay. Good evening. My name is Harry Lamberson. My wife and I have lived in Lake Forest for 38 years. We currently reside at 1024 Northwestern Avenue, which is the north building in the Regents Road development. As it happens, our townhouse unit is the closest to Western Avenue, and in fact, the entire length of our townhouse unit overlooks Western Avenue from our second floor. The north end of our townhouse unit is less than 100 yards from the corner of Laurel and Western, and of course, it's on the northwest corner where this proposed development will occur. We oppose the plan that was submitted by the petitioner as recently as this week, and which is now before you. We do so for several important reasons, but time limitation will preclude discussing more than two. The first has to do with density. The petitioner has stated they seek 164 dwelling units for this 10-plus acre site, and that density is appropriate in light of the existing density of other developments in the neighborhood, some cases comparable, in some cases actually more density. However, that is not the end of the Plan Commission's consideration of the density issue. You must consider the density of the neighborhood and the impact this development has on the entire neighborhood. Let me define the neighborhood. If you go 1 block south of Laurel and Western, on Western, and 1 block west of the intersection on Laurel, and then go to the north property line of the proposed site and go 1 very long block north from Franklin to Thomas on both the east and west side of Western, you have the highest concentration of multifamily housing anywhere in the entire city of Lake Forest. And when I refer to the entire city, I'm referring to all 17.25 square miles of our city. In this area, we have 478 dwelling units. To add in the center of this neighborhood, 164 dwelling units, as has been proposed, which would translate easily into more than 300 new residents and 300 new vehicles, will undoubtedly endanger the health, safety, and welfare, and I use that term advisedly, of the neighborhood. Not only the neighborhood as it exists today for those neighbors who reside there, but also for the new neighbors that would be moving into the development, and most importantly, for those neighbors who live north and west of our neighborhood, in some cases a far distance, who daily use either Western, Laurel, and/or Woodland to either access the main business district, in as much as Western is the main north-south corridor into the business district, or access McKinley and do so through the Woodland Road underpass at Western to get onto McKinley, and in most cases go north to the high school and points beyond. The second reason for opposing this plan has to do with building height. Now, in the written materials, there was nothing stated regarding building height of these 5 buildings. Tonight, the petitioner has said, well, it could be as high as 49 feet. I would like to remind the commission that at the May 13th meeting, when the petitioner removed the 4-story building from consideration and offered a 3-story building plus gable roof, it was stated under oath that that building would be 57.3 feet. In other words, the 4-story building would be reduced significantly to 57.3 feet. Our code, the Lake Forest Code, which is the law of this city, says 35 feet is the maximum height for a building in this district, measured by the grade to the peak. None of the buildings in this neighborhood exceed that amount, 35 feet. Yet this petitioner, at the prior meeting, suggested the 3-story building, the apartment building with the gabled roof, would be 57.3 feet. Tonight it's 49 feet. All I can say is I would ask this commission to have the petitioner comply with our law, which has always been on the books and they could see it at any time, and that to deny approval of this petition until such time as the petitioner submits a plan that conforms to the law of this city with no building on this property greater than 35 feet. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak and for your service on this commission.
Thank you very much. Mr. Capstick, and following Mr. Capstick will be Spencer Isola.
John Capstick, 1038 Western Avenue. Mr. Chairman, I used to be in the military, and I instantly recognized this plan. This is a barracks. The officers' quarters are on the left, and the enlisted men are on the right. It's a barracks with a boulevard. To enable this plan to happen, the city are committed to borrowing $31 million. The $31 million is to be repaid if it gets built and if the properties sell and the properties rent over a 23-year period by the taxes that will be derived from the units. For those of us that have driven down to the Focus development in Glenview and looked at a Focus building and the style of building and the quality of workmanship and materials, can anybody imagine what this site will look like in 23 years' time when our children look at what we created here this evening? The entire project and the speed, the express train that we're all participating in is because the city is desperately short of funds. It needs to get its hands on the Focus money. The citizens of this city raised money and created an alternative plan, one that we hear very little about, despite the efforts that we went to. If necessary, the citizens are going to have to raise some money and hire some legal help and find out, get an indication of what the true finances of this city are. Because at the moment, none of us are aware of the amount of debt that the city has incurred by building its headquarters and its bank loans. So, in my view, there should be no vote this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Isola. And following him will be Beth Napoli, excuse me.
Gentlemen, I'm Spencer Isola, and I live at 1026 Northwestern, Regents Row. Why wasn't the height of the buildings included in the revised 14-page plan that was posted on the City of Lake Forest website? Kathy answered the question for us a little bit earlier. The city decided not to include that information, even though it was included with the previous plans. Why weren't any elevations included? Once again, Kathy answered that question. It was decided not to include that information, even though it was provided on the previous plans. We now know that if we did not have that information, we make the assumption you did not have that information. So you have not had time to review the building height or the elevations of the building. Would you buy a luxury automobile or a luxury boat or a luxury house from someone who couldn't show you what it would look like? If you vote, that is what you're being asked to do. If you don't know the height of the building and you haven't seen the elevations. It is almost inconceivable that a series of bad financial decisions by the City of Lake Forest, such as building the Taj Mahal Municipal Center, could lead to such a desperate need for revenue that the city would abandon all of the traditional rules and guidelines in order to fast-track the focused development. It reminds me of the city of Chicago selling the rights to the parking meters and also the Chicago Skyway, both bad moves that will haunt Chicago for the next 100 years. That's what's going to happen with this focused plan. If Focus advances with this development and constructs second-rate buildings, the buildings will be there for 100 years, and they will be a blight on the city of Lake Forest. Gentlemen, you cannot correct a bad financial decision with an even worse financial decision. Let me repeat that. You cannot correct a bad financial decision with an even worse financial decision. Go and look at the Focus development in Glenview. Two wrongs do not make a right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Beth, are you still here? And following her will be Bill McFadden.
Good evening. Is this good? Good evening. I'm Beth Napoli. My husband and I live at 58 East Laurel Avenue. And I'm sorry, can you hear me? Okay, sorry, I'm Beth Napoli. My husband Matthew and I live off the street at 58 East Laurel. Our home and garden are on property immediately west of the former Municipal Services building. 35 years ago, before we decided to purchase our home, I called Charles Crook. In 1980, Mr. Crook was the Lake Forest Director of Planning and Development. When we talked, I expressed my serious concerns about the future or potential development of the Municipal Services site. Charles Crook assured me that because this was Lake Forest, our community, our city officials, and the other Lake Forest city residents would never approve inappropriate development of the site. The current proposal is wrong for the city of Lake Forest and wrong for the Laurel and Western Avenues. Please do not vote tonight.
Thank you. Following Mr. McFadden will be Kathy Griffin, who is appearing on behalf of Nan Remington.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bill McFadden. I'm the president of Ashbury Woods, 55 East Laurel. We are kitty corner from the 10-acre site, which is the subject of our discussion. I would like to put up an overhead of the current plan as submitted. All right, one thing that's going on here is the north-south access street internal to the complex empties onto Laurel, and Laurel will get the brunt of most of the traffic flow, service trucks, residents on the condos and the single-family homes in and out, as well as, and we verified this, as well as the construction traffic, which includes cement trucks, dump trucks, other heavy construction equipment up and down Laurel coming from Route 41, coming up Green Bay and turning to go east on Laurel to access the site, as well as other equipment coming down from 176 down Green Bay and then going east on Laurel to enter the site at the same location off of Laurel. As mentioned, we have a disruption of our so-called quiet residential street for anywhere from 3 to 5 years with ongoing construction traffic. I wanted to point out that at the north end of the 10-acre site, which is the Franklin elevation, we have a row of very fine trees which will be saved in the parkway on Franklin, as well as a berm that will be maintained in some fashion to protect the residents on the opposite side of the street from noise and construction and heavy traffic. Most of the traffic, though, will circulate down Western as well as Laurel. What I'd like to point out is it's time to draw attention to the nature, the residential nature of Laurel as a quiet side street off of Western, and give some attention to how we beautify the Laurel Avenue site, particularly with being sensitive to the long-standing residents, which are in condo buildings, as well as single-family homes and some large homes farther west on Laurel. What we propose is to change and become sensitive to the heritage oak tree, which is in excess of 100 years old, and in fact is historic and is the symbol of Lake Forest, and make that a feature of this new development, whatever ends up getting built, and really leverage off the beauty of this tree and the historic nature and recognition of this tree as part of this new complex. What I would suggest is the following: to remove the 3 single-family homes which are butting right up against the drip line of this tree. This would be this area here. Okay. And to replace it with a true park. And this would have the benefits of beautifying the site, softening the institutional look of the entire development, and adding interest and beauty from the standpoint of the residents across the street on the south side of Laurel. Let me give you an example of what a revised site plan would look like. with this adjustment. What we're doing is opening up the area to about a 1-acre grassy area and make some further refinements in landscaping. Now, why this is important, let me point out a problem with the historic oak tree. The old site plan has the first row of single-family homes butting right up against the drip line of this tree, which is a massive tree and has an extensive root system. We've reviewed studies, have talked to an arborist, and I've also talked to the Historic Preservation Committee, a couple of members there, who are very concerned about endangering this tree, which is a historic symbol of Lake Forest. We need, in effect, to have a clear area, which is called a critical zone, critical root system zone around the base of the tree, which would be at least another diameter of the drip line from the tree in order to preserve the root system. Once you start excavating into the root system, you're going to start destroying the health of the tree and eventually lead to the death of the tree. And certainly no one wants the legacy in accepting a plan that actually endangers the symbol of Lake Forest. And I'll point to the area that's involved. This area, if you butt up the foundations of the first row of houses in this area, you're right into the root system radius.
Bill, could you continue to speak into the mic? Otherwise, folks can't.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I was just trying to point out from the diagram, which
Sure.
is over to the right.
Understand.
Okay, another thing that can be done is the following. This is, if you look at the same area, this is smaller scale, but what you could do is you could landscape this, put in flower beds as well as a walk path, and have access off the sidewalk on Laurel into the interior of the complex, and treat this as an amenity for the complex. Would be very attractive not only for the residents of the complex, but also for the people who are residents on Laurel, to serve as a community focal point and a signature piece of landscaping for the entire complex, as well as beautifying the street, and something that passersby and those driving up and down Laurel would recognize as really a beautifying type of asset, which we are leveraging off of and taking maximum advantage of. I think that we should, I'm
Could you
sorry.
wrap up your comments?
I think what we should do is put the brakes on this and take a look at this asset of Lake Forest before we destroy it, and consult with a arborist and consult with the Historic Preservation Committee as well as the Department of Forestry before we start digging around with whatever density we're talking about, digging around the protected radius of this tree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin, following her will be Phelps Longtree.
I'm Kathy Griffin. I live at 50 East Laurel. I'm speaking for my neighbor, Nan Remington, who's at 56 East Laurel. The city of Lake Forest would not condone the construction of a big box store along the tollway corridor because it was not fitting to the standards of our tree green city. However, you now wish to plant huge elephants in the downtown area where Lake Forest is truly residential and not a zoo. Please do not allow the revenue blind the fact that you are creating a Caprini Green for future generations, not beautiful green space. Signed, Nan Remington. Thank you.
Thank you. Following Mr. Longtree will be Steve Bruin.
My name is Phelps Langtree. I live in Crystal Point, adjacent to this Laurel Western project. We are very concerned about its quality and size because no matter which plan is selected, it will have an enormous effect on the Crystal Point, Burr Oak, and Northwestern neighborhood. I realize Crystal Point is not an award-winning architecture, but after 40 years, our residents are happy with it, the landscaping, and how the project is held up. We must consider what this new project, will look like in another 40 years. It would put us residents at ease to know the plan has appropriate top-quality architecture and a beautiful layout in the true character of Lake Forest, the kind of ownership dwellings that we neighbors would love to move into ourselves and not just another busy, overcrowded development to make life miserable for us all at the north end of Western Avenue. This is the largest parcel of land in our downtown area, so it must be of a quality of Market Square as well as of all the beautiful residential neighborhoods throughout Lake Forest. We just seem to be chipping away at the original deficient plan. After all of the information and ideas you have presented, including the residents' new plan, go back to the drawing board and come up with a truly outstanding development Lake Forest downtown deserves. Commissioners, please take the time to digest it all and not rush to approve anything just to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bruin? And Mr. Bruin, before you start, I've got 2 registration slips. Is there somebody else
One, no. I thought I was
impersonating
gonna-
you this evening?
I thought I was going to be late, so I asked Jan to fill out one for me,
Thank
but
you
it
so
turns
much.
out I got here just on time, so.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Please
my
proceed.
name is Steve Bruin, and I live at 1261 Burr Oak Road. And before I start with the comments that I've written for today's meeting, and I've provided all of you copies of them, okay, to become part of the official record, I'd like to comment on the comments that Kathy made at the beginning of the meeting, because she spoke specifically about the fact that what Focus has been doing is in fact meeting the parameters that have been set forth in the site plan that was originally developed by a special committee, approved by the Plan Commission, approved by the City Council, re-looked at by the Plan Commission, and reapproved. The difficulty all of the residents are having, and we've voiced this concern from the get-go back in 2007, is that the plan is flawed. You can't have a good outcome if you have a bad, flawed plan. And none of us can blame Focus for working towards a flawed plan. That's what they were given, okay? So, as most of you know, I have spoken at all of the past Plan Commission meetings at which Focus has presented their plans for Laurel Western Avenue development. I have been very critical of their plans in terms of density, scale, mass, and the general layout of the site plan. I have also been critical of their unwillingness to alter the overall site plan based on the residents' unhappiness with the plan. Their most recent plan includes 3 changes I personally like: saving most of Franklin Park, making the road through the development a dogleg from Laurel to Western, and a pedestrian walkway through to Franklin. I do not want the street to go through to Franklin. However, the same college quad layout, or military base, of the buildings persists, which I'm unhappy about. I have come to believe that the problem is not Focus. They're doing the best they can given the guidelines they've been given. The problem is our Lake Forest government, including this commission. My belief is that whoever negotiated this secret deal with Focus, because it is secret, is telling them, don't worry, your plan will be approved despite what the public is complaining about, because we are going to make it happen. We need this money above all else. I think everybody here knows that money is the real motivating factor for the city. The Plan Commission has heard public testimony that has been, without exception, against the overall site plan. The residents even went so far as to hire independent architects to develop a different site plan that was presented at the last Plan Commission meeting. We aren't just complaining. We offered an alternate site plan that was met with overwhelming public support. Chairman Lay, you specifically asked for alternate ideas or direction from the audience prior to the public testimony at the last meeting. and then you simply ignored what we presented. You didn't even so much as acknowledge it. Shame on you. Each one of you, and I'm talking to the Plan Commission members, has a responsibility as Plan Commission members to ensure this development is appropriate for Lake Forest. Ask yourself before you vote on anything, will this enhance the reputation of Lake Forest and stand the test of time? Will our children and grandchildren drive by the property in 25 years and say this is a desirable place to live and raise a family in Lake Forest? This is the fourth Plan Commission meeting discussing the development, and I have not heard a single substantive idea or direction given to the folks from Focus on what each of you likes or dislikes about this plan. Forget about streets, garbage pickup, parking. Talk to them about the overall site plan. That's what Kathy has asked you to vote on tonight. Talk to them about the number of buildings, the placement of the buildings, the size of the buildings, the density of the units. We gave you a plan to compare it to. Tell them what, if anything, you like about it and what you would like to see them incorporate in their plan. Quit asking them to guess what you want. Tell them what you want and starting with the overall site plan. In my opinion, you are telling them where the deck chairs should be on the sinking Titanic instead of telling them how to fix the leak. What was particularly frustrating at the last meeting were the items you, Chairman Lay, asked the Plan Commission to vote on at the conclusion of the meeting. Your items were based on the implied acceptance of the site plan. I'll be done in a minute, Kathy. Site plan as presented by Focus. There was clear pushback on the questions, but you simply ignored it and insisted that each member vote on meaningless, irrelevant questions unless you've already decided that the plan is acceptable despite what the residents want. I have a question that I would like each of you to answer at the conclusion of public testimony, or now if you choose. Why would you approve this site plan despite all the public testimony against it? And if you don't like it, then have the courage to stand up and say why and what you want Focus to change. Thank you for your time, and I hope you decide to finally acknowledge our complaints and ask Focus to change the overall site plan. Give them a chance to do the right thing without having to guess what you want. Make this a development that you, as a Plan Commission member, will be proud to have been a part of. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you. Next will be Linda Van Eckhout. And then following her will be Alice Valentine.
Hello, I'm Linda Van Eckhout, 1230 Northwestern Avenue. That's Crystal Point. I want to thank the Plan Commission members, staff, and Christine, her team, and Focus Development for this special meeting. And you know what I have to do here is this. Because things have changed so much since I came in here with my speech. I agree 100% with what Phelps said, with what Steve said. Things keep changing. We don't like it. There's really nothing about it that we really like. When you hear us talk about a barracks, what does that say to you? That's all I'm going to say at this point. But thank you for listening to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Alice Valentine, and then following her will be Marion McNair.
Oh my goodness, there's a lot of people here tonight. 200? I have to refer to my notes or else I lose my, pardon the pun, focus. I wish that you would give more consideration to the alternative plan that was presented at the last meeting. However, it's my understanding that this is not possible because Focus Development Plan is before you at the moment for your consideration to approve deny, or continue discussion. Should you vote to continue, I would hope that Focus would utilize some of the alternative plans that are diversity of architectural buildings to give the site more of a Lake Forest feeling and not the look of a Fort Sheridan barracks. Thank you, and I'd like to give the rest of my time to Emily Watts.
Chairman Lane, Marion and I would like to jointly speak.
Okay.
Thank you. I will need some help.
Would you both please identify yourselves for the record?
I'm Emily Watts. I live at 1230 Northwestern Avenue at Crystal Point. This is my neighbor.
I'm Marion McNair. I live at 1230 Northwestern, Crystal Point.
Thank you.
We'd like to go to a PowerPoint that we have. We don't need this.
Oh, you have a PowerPoint?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
This is it, right? What we know. There's no large-scale rental units currently in Lake Forest. The surrounding neighborhood residents are frustrated and have strong objections so far. There is a unique opportunity for a quality development in a park-like setting, and that the Plan Commission will take some action. Let's think, what does a historic legacy project look like? This is 105 Laurel Avenue and Regents Row. Let's think, what will stand the test of time? What's considered a landmark legacy? Lake Forest downtown area, Glenview downtown area. You may be asking yourself, why is Glenview being compared in these photographs? The city of Glenview has allowed Focus Development to build a project in their commercial area. Let's think, what is unique about the quality of buildings in Lake Forest? I think you notice our McDonald's versus their McDonald's, all right? In the 1990s, Lake Forest gave fewer variances for building projects. Now, is that true today? Do you think this Glenview project will stand the test of time? Focus is currently building this project in Glenview, north of Waukegan and Gulf Road intersection. You can drive over there. It takes about 45 minutes. This is basically a wood frame building. As said before, stated they like to build something that's an easy build-out ability. And this certainly looks like it's easy to build. Focus Development in Glenview. Let's take a look at the siding on this 3-story building. It's plywood siding. There's no mortar in this stone. It's applied stone. Quality. Can we be assured that exterior materials are at the highest quality for our redevelopment project? Well, that's still unclear. Remember, Focus Development said they plan to use slate alternative shingles on the Laurel project at the Building Review Board meeting on March the 4th. So it's not real slate, folks. It's an alternative. This is a formula for making money. Will this stand the test of time? The buildings on the outside don't tell us that they're luxury, although they have stainless steel appliances inside and quartz countertops. It's the outside that doesn't tell us that it's luxurious. Focus Development will be gone after about 85% of the rentals are occupied and when all the condos are sold. Then institutional investors will buy it and the city will then be stuck with this development. Comparison with Crystal Point condos is not a valid point. Crystal Point is of quality construction that has survived over 40 years because it is a full masonry building and it's spacious. Some of the condo units are more than 2,000 square feet. Now, truthfully, does this look like a park setting to you? The lap pool that was proposed is gone. The separate amenities building is gone. The bocce ball court is gone. And to be fair, we do have some of Franklin Park back in this drawing, although it is somewhat reduced and next to an apartment building that houses 36 units. This site really has only two building types, large and small. Look at it. Here's one resident's thoughts after returning from Florida and shown this rendering. This is true. He was asked, "What do you think this is?" when shown this drawing. He said, "It looks like a military base with officers' quarters, barracks, and a parade field." It's a falsehood to think at some future date that these apartments will be converted into rentals. Most of the apartments are too small to convert. If you look at the design, there are big apartments on the ends, but the apartments that are in the middle of the whole unit of apartment buildings, they're small. They will remain rentals. Marion?
Who owns Franklin Park? This is public land. We should have a covenant that it will never be developed. We do not want the acreage sold to Focus Development. City decision-making, good or flawed? Is this redevelopment project primarily to help the city out of debt? Will it be a legacy project for future generations? Is this a case of history repeating itself? I think all of you in this room know about what happened with Bear College and other developments. And here we are again. City decision-making, good or flawed. The City Council needs to amend their density requirements for this project. Literally hundreds of citizens have complained about the density. Initially, Focus proposed 118 units. After public comment, the number declined to 114, and now the number is at 110. This is still too many apartments. Now, what about the traffic? 182 cars parking underground at the apartments. New ramps. A number of these cars will be entering and exiting the underground garage's new ramps at the same time. Safety. What kind of traffic and safety could this cause at the intersection of Laurel and Western? Are we going to get a new traffic study now that the site map has changed? It's busier now that the grill is open outside. It's really busy out there. So I think we need a new traffic study. And we have more questions. We already talked about this. What about the elevations and the roof lines? We ask that the council consider this. We've all been asking. And this is the only drawing as of this date that describes the buildings facades from the street. All right. At the same time, it's lacking in diversity of architectural styles. Does the city want something like this at Laurel and Western? Here are the three voting options the Plan Commission members have tonight. Approve the plan, deny the plan, or continue to improve the plan. As concerned citizens and residents, we're asking the Plan Commission members to continue to improve the plan. Thank you.
Our next registrant is Dan Sebald. And then following Mr. Sebald will be Richard Cottrell.
Dan Sebald, 560 Ivy Court. I'm going to speak a little louder, so. I submitted a letter, and if that letter is Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. I submitted a letter, and if you have that letter available, I'd like to display the land use plan. Otherwise, that's fine. I'd like to say that, in general, I support this plan, and I like the idea of density. If there's a place to have density, this is it. It's near the town center, it's near a depot, it's near a high school, it's near commercial property. It encourages shorter automobile trips, it encourages walking. Future generations are not as interested in auto-centric development as the past generations. I'm all for land preservation. The type of land that I want to preserve is the stuff west Lake Forest. Conway Golf Course, that's very inefficient land use in my opinion. With that in mind, I'd like to, in my opinion, I feel like density has probably been compromised somewhat. The developer indicated that compared to the north and the south, the density is in line with that, in fact, less at this point. So some improvements I'd like to suggest. I would like it to have a little more urban feel and talk about streetscapes, which was mentioned. And that's what I would like, is the streets have a better appearance. Right now, it looks sort of like a community college from the renderings that I saw. So I would like on Western, which I think is Building D, to be moved out parallel to the street to give some continuity along Western with the northern part of the city. On similar, Franklin, in the original drawings, there was street access on Franklin, and I thought that was preferred to me. The top three buildings in the cluster, if they were moved closer to the street and the sidewalk moved parallel with the street, you would then have street access for those three, and you could reduce some interior space. Similar, Franklin Park. Now, like I said, I'm for preserving open space. But if you look at this land use, there's Franklin Park, and if that's a park, then down at Oak Heritage Park, that space is as big. Right in the center of the complex, that space is bigger than Franklin Park. The land in front is bigger than Franklin Park. There's like 4 quasi-mini parks there. So one gentleman had the idea of making bigger space down by Oak Heritage, and I think that would be a good compromise, that if you move street access for the top 3, you could rearrange the cluster and give more space and a better park on the south. The berm, I think, in my opinion, the berm has to go. I don't know what the reason that would serve in the development other than to cut down noise for people from the north. But if you had 3 homes there, that would serve the same purpose. And the previous speaker mentioned the quality materials, and that's important to me as well. I would like to see some variation in colors and materials so that it doesn't look like a campus of some sort. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cottrell? Following, is he still here? Richard Cottrell? Okay. And following him will be Paul Hammond.
I'm Richard Cottrell. I live on Laurel Avenue, 119 East Laurel. I have a dental office there as well. Can you hear me? At a time when the word transparency is being discussed so much today, our city commissioners are being anything but. Why is that? Maybe it's because the more citizens learn about the motivation behind this deal, the more upset they become. The new municipal services complex is what is driving the Western and Laurel Avenue project because the municipal services project had significant cost overruns. I implied at the last meeting that this was all about money, but I didn't know at the time that the city had an outstanding past due bridge loan covering these overruns that the bank wants repaid. If this is the case, and that is what is driving this out of control freight train, maybe we need to raise taxes, pay off the loan, and then develop this 10-acre site responsibly. The developer's representatives have implied that at least 100 rental units are required for economic feasibility. But this is only if the rental project is to be flipped to an insurance company or some other outside investor only interested in larger scale developments. If a well-conceived 30-unit rental building was built on this property, there has to be enough money in this town that at least one family would be interested in adding such a property to their portfolio, or maybe we could even afford to keep it ourselves in the city portfolio. While I applaud the site plan proposed by the architect hired by concerned citizens, this new plan does not effectively address density. It is not the responsibility of local residents to absorb the environmental impact resulting from such a high level of density just to squeeze a few more dollars out of the project. What we need to do is step back, pay off the outstanding bridge loan, and come up with a plan of the same quality as Amberley Woods or some of the nicer projects in neighboring Highland Park. Going forward, this has to be done with transparency, taking into consideration the long-term impact the project will have on the entire community. Last but not least, and Kathy, I addressed this to you, the impending changes in our plumbing codes to allow PVC instead of cast iron for waste lines seems to be all too conveniently timed ahead of this project. If true, you can't help but think that focused development and this outstanding bridge loan has put us over a proverbial barrel. Another thing I noticed about this project, there's a huge underground parking structure for the rental buildings with one access. I think you need to look at the plan and see how ridiculous that is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond, following him will be Jan Gibson.
Paul Hammond, 511 Beverly. Let us examine Lake Forest impact fees. Let us examine Lake Forest impact fees. If you were to build a housing unit in Lake Forest, then the impact fee for the parks and beach is over $15,000. The Laurel Avenue project has 172 units, so 172 living units times 15,000 is $2.7 million. The Laurel Avenue redevelopment budget calls for a one-time payment of $1,000 to the city of Lake Forest and not $2.7 million. If you were to build a housing unit in Lake Forest, then the impact fee for schools is over $20,000. The Laurel Avenue project has 172 units, so 172 units times 20,000 is $3.4 million. The Laurel Avenue redevelopment budget calls for a one-time payment of $1,000 to the city of Lake Forest and not $3.4 million. If you were to build a housing unit in Lake Forest, then the impact fees for police, fire, and water plant is over $5,000. The Laurel Avenue project has 172 units, so 172 units should be paying the city of Lake Forest about $1 million. The Laurel Avenue project budget calls for a one-time payment of $1,000 to the city of Lake Forest and not $1 million. On page 18 of the Laurel Avenue redevelopment plan, there's a discussion on the sanitary district. I received my tax bill last month and I pay approximately $400 a year. If the 172 focused development units each paid their fair share of $400 per living unit, like I have to pay, then 172 units times $400 is $68,000 a year over 23 years. That equals $1.5 million. The Laurel Avenue redevelopment plan on page 18 calls for a one-time payment of $1,000 to the sanitary district and not $1.5 million. The city of Lake Forest receives $2,300 from the average tax bill. 172 units times $2,300 for 23 years equals $9 million. The Laurel Avenue redevelopment plan calls for a one-time payment of $1,000 for all city services for the next 23 years, not $9 million. So in conclusion, even though the budget calls for the city to be paid for the Laurel Avenue land, the budget is missing $2.7 million for the parks, $3.4 million for the schools, $1 million for the police, fire, and water plant, $1.5 million for the sanitary district, and $9 million for city services, for a total of $18 million, and maybe as high as $28 million if you consider all facts fairly. This deal is just like the City of Chicago parking meter sale. Sell something for $1 billion that's worth $10 billion. Ask Mayor Daley, and he thinks the parking meter sale was a good deal. Ask any resident in Chicago, and they believe that the city lost $9 billion. On May 4th, 2014, the Plan Commission had an executive session with the Property and Public Lands Committee, and I believe that the only reason that the numbers appear to be balanced is the real costs were ignored. Finally, I'm asking the Plan Commission to respect the petition submitted by Jan Gibson from 300 residents that believe this plan is unacceptable. I would keep this site for a city park. Thank you very much for your time.
Kathy, I'm going to need PowerPoint. Give me appendix. Jan Gibson, 59 East Franklin Place. Last month's meeting had two agenda items, townhouses on McKinley and Laurel Western. The plan for McKinley sailed through the Plan Commission, and deservedly so. Why? Because it fit Lake Forest style. It was colonial, fit the site, and the neighborhood. Why are we all struggling with Laurel Western after 5 sessions? This is the 5th one here, just for Plan Commission, I think. Here are the reasons. And by the way, I'm using the Lake Forest city's website for this. These are the city's vision and depiction of Lake Forest. I just want you to take a look at a few of these buildings. There's one, of course, Market Square. Then we have a Stanley Anderson building, the bank building. Let's see. Down. Oh, I can click also. Okay. We have Howard Van Doren Shaw. And we have also had Howard Van Doren Shaw, and we have Regents Rose Townhouse. So we have all of Lake Forest styles, including Tudor houses, all different kinds, Harry Lindeberg House. And then what we're comparing this with and is the new development. But as we went down to Glenview, and actually Emily brought this up, we have, is it a Glenview style? I can say all-American style. It's different towns in the Chicago area and outside. She talked about the materials. I'm sure that Mr. Anderson will rebut this in terms of the quality of styles that will be with our style in Lake Forest. But still, this is a lot of density, a lot of height, and I think we can do better. We know what fits in Lake Forest and what doesn't. Your charge, Plan Commission, is to direct the developer with the site plan that fits the site, to oversee the subdivisions of land, among other things. You personally know what fits and doesn't fit, yet I think you need to direct focus. We've listened to the residents, and no one is happy right now. You hear this huge crowd. This current plan could have been the start of the project, and a good start if all of you had listened to the residents. It took 4 meetings for some of our wishes to be heard. You see now that we at least have an entrance into Western Avenue,
It is inviting. We have a dog leg from Laurel to Western. We have a Franklin Park is there. We basically modified or saved part of the berm and at the north and at the west, but there are still pieces missing. The building height, to me, is very ominous. Whether it's at 49 feet or 58 feet, it would still be 33% higher than Crystal Point, even if it's a 49. So, and almost twice as high if it's 58. So for all those continuous 5 buildings are all going to be pretty big. How are they going to reduce that? For goodness sakes, request the reduction of the number of units to this project. Have 2 two-story buildings and 3 three-story buildings. Change one of them maybe to duplexes, that one with 18 units. Rather than 2 types of structures, maybe have 3 types. Have the single-family homes at the south face Laurel. Integrate with other neighborhoods, or remove them as Bill McFadden suggested. Much of the planning phase should have been set up, I think, before these public meetings. The staff knows what works and what doesn't. Why are we still dealing with the same things? The height, the mass, the placement of the buildings, proper placement of open spaces. It's taken 5 meetings to rid ourselves of the 62 high foot 4-story structures. Why so long? You need to tell Focus what not to do. You have to lead. You've been dancing around a lot of these issues this whole time. Lake Forest should look like Lake Forest, not another community. You know that, and that's why we live here. This project, once completed, will stand either as a testament to your work on behalf of the city or otherwise. You have the power to direct this in good faith, not driven by the financial part of this, but by the aesthetics and the quality site planning. There is much work to be done. Do not move this forward tonight. Vote no on acceptance until the details can be worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Karzos. And following Diane will be Paul Bergman.
As we're approaching the end of the testimonies, and I think I'm one of the perennial testimoniers, I would like to read a letter that was written and sent on May 31st to Chairman Lay from John Drummond, who was not able to be here tonight. And as I have looked at it, as all of the testimony has come forward, I feel it in many respects seems to encapsulate what the residents think. Dear Mr. Lay, I have the following questions and comments about the new Focus proposal. Let us take a sober and thoughtful look at the new plan as it is today, not at the plan from which it evolved. Meaning, please don't say, look how much better this is. The plan from which the new one evolved is no longer meaningful, so let's move on. 1, building types. There are only 2, one large, one small, in the plan. The neighbor's alternative plan submitted to you on May 11 proposed 5 types of structures to create a neighborhood environment with a diverse mix of economically stable and visually interesting buildings. Townhouses, 23, were proposed under the alternative plan. Focus proposes 0 townhouses. Why are townhouses not part of this plan? 2, single-family homes. The new plan proposes 12 homes arranged in cookie-cutter fashion, none of which face the street as requested by your commission. The pattern is simply the same plan, flip-flopped, A and B. This is very unattractive to any buyer who wants a somewhat unique identity, especially considering the proposed price. Monotony. Although the 3 rental buildings and the 2 condo buildings serve different customer base, they look very much alike. They are all 3 stories, almost the same size, and arranged in a very boring military fashion around a quadrangle. 4, pedestrian friendliness. There are no longer any through pedestrian walkways passing from north to south. 5, Lake Forest ambience. There is nothing in this plan that says Lake Forest. This plan could be in any suburban Chicago community. We want a plan that creates a model for centuries to come, as did Market Square. It should win awards for its unique community-building character and innovations. And finally, number 6, measure twice, cut once. Why are you considering anything less than a unique solution? Obtain it from Focus at the price of delayed approval. A better mix of residential products in a far more attractive arrangement can be accomplished if only the commissioners, listen. Thank you for your consideration. John Drummond, 410 East Woodland Road.
Following Mr. Bergman will be Frank Martin. Pardon me?
I'll take a pass on that.
So you choose not to speak? Thank you. Frank Martin. And following Mr. Martin will be Jim Warfield.
Good evening. From the moment this plan was announced, the Laurel and Western neighborhood was shocked by the site development for this project. Louder? From the moment this plan was announced, the Laurel and Western neighborhood was shocked by the site development for this project. I think the first speaker here this evening very adequately summarized the community objection to this development. So I won't repeat that, but let me simply say this. Gentlemen, there's a reason why Lake Forest looks the way it does. Your predecessors stood tall. They stood on principle to reject wrong and unworthy projects and developments. We hope you carry on that tradition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warfield?
Good morning again. Greetings. My name is Jim Warfield, 140 Franklin Place. I think Mr. Lamberson and Mr. Brune have made salient points regarding this project. At the last meeting, I told you that there was nothing that you could do in terms of making recommendations to Focus Development. Focus Development has been responsive to almost everything that has been testified here. I do not endorse the plan supported by local residents that have been offered to you, mainly because of the density. It doesn't really address the issues at heart. Yes, there are city finances involved. Yes, there is an undisclosed purchase price. I am not convinced that Crystal Point or the condos immediately to the south of this development is the gold standard for density. You have a compounded density issue when you're offering that number of apartments and condos in this concentrated area. It fosters the urbanization of Lake Forest, which we don't want. My grave concern is that I do not want you to approve the plan before you tonight. I am not looking for a rejection of a plan with a recommendation to come back with other changes to be made. I think you have to send a message back to the City Council of Lake Forest saying that the parameters that have been provided for this development are untenable, they will not work, and they do not satisfy the overwhelming majority of people that have spoken here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield. That's all the registration slips we have. Is there anyone else who has not registered who wishes to come forward and speak? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay, sir. Please tell us your name and address.
Yeah, of course. My name's Dave Neumeister. I live at 119 East Laurel Avenue. And first of all, I'd like to thank you gentlemen for the service that you're providing to the city. I know you've got a tough job to do, and I can empathize with that because I did it for 6 years, from 1998 to 2004. I think that's right, Kathy. And for full disclosure, I'm also the chairman of the city's legal committee as we currently sit. When I was on the commission, my colleagues and I viewed our role as basically twofold. It's a little more nuanced, obviously. But one of our principal obligations was to make sure that we were getting the best deal for the city and its residents that we could for the short, midterm, and especially the long term, because we knew that what we were doing had a lasting legacy. We had some tough issues, including the original Amberley Woods, which we turned away, and it then came back in another form. So as part of that role, we weren't afraid to send people back until we got what we wanted, and if we didn't get what we wanted, we were prepared to move on. The other issue was to make sure that the comprehensive plan was enforced, and when I came on the commission back in 1998, is just after, I think it's the current plan, had been put out. And I had the liberty to take a look at it back there, page 22, section 1.5. I'm going to skip some of it, but what it says here at the bottom of page 22, the subject matter area to the west of the Western Avenue-Laurel Avenue intersection says, therefore, multifamily residential units with a mix of retail and/or office uses limited to the frontage on Western Avenue should be designated for parcels north and south of Laurel Avenue. A portion of the municipal services property fronting Western Avenue and south of the Franklin Park Place should be designated with park and recreation use. These land use changes are recommended for the following reasons. And now I'm flipping on to page 25, and it cites traffic at some of the adjacent intersections. But the comprehensive plan is still a document that a lot of work went into, and that some, I don't know if deference is the right word, but attention certainly paid to it in the spirit that went into it. And if you would just, as you move forward in your discretion, in fulfilling your duties, if you just take these matters into consideration and make sure we're getting the best deal that we can for the city and be true to the comprehensive plan. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dooster. Anybody else who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to our next order of business, and that is staff response to public testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Lay. I do have a number of issues that I'd like to make some brief comments on. Although I am certainly not a financial expert, I do feel compelled to respond to a couple comments that were made. And again, I can't do it in detail. I'm certainly not the finance director and certainly won't pretend to be. But I do want to be clear that the city has not taken on $31 million in debt for this project. The City Council has no intention of doing that. In fact, to date, the City Council has not issued any debt related to this project. The Council intends to proceed with this project on a pay-as-you-go basis, and they do not intend to incur significant debt. Second, the city has no outstanding loan due on this property. There is no outstanding bridge loan. In fact, a number of years ago, the city refinanced its loan and obtained a very favorable interest rate. The city will receive significant impact fees related to this development. I think you heard some other figures, but I can assure you that the development fees the impact fees are significant. I also want to state that as part of the council's due diligence, a subcommittee of the City Council, the Property and Public Lands Committee, spent many meetings looking through the financial aspects of this project. As the full council began to discuss this project, they certainly are, we're very concerned about their fiduciary responsibility and to assure that they were looking at the numbers correctly, they actually brought in an independent financial consultant on several occasions and received input and confirmation of the numbers from that person. So again, I don't want to go into detail, but I do feel that some of the misstatements just need to be corrected. Other comments, with respect to the oak tree, the city arborist has been very involved in looking at the site plan. Again, we don't have a final site plan, we don't have a final plat. We're a ways from that, we don't have a final landscape plan. But it is our understanding that the line of the single-family homes that are closest to the oak tree actually follow very closely the line of the existing building. Given the location of that building today, the roots of the oak tree really are confined to that large open area. The city arborist has recommended that, in fact, very little activity occur in the area of that oak tree, that no sidewalks be added, that no plantings occur, that the best way to protect that oak tree is really to leave it alone. So I wanted to assure you that we certainly have looked at that, and as we move forward into more detailed plans, that will certainly continue to be looked at. With respect to the architectural design of the buildings, certainly the images that you see on the screen from the Glenview project, Glenview is a different community, that is a different site, it's a different type of project. This does not in any way, shape, or form represent what is proposed for this site. The Building Review Board will certainly look at the city's design guidelines. Those guidelines do talk about scale and form and consistency with architectural style and quality materials, and we have heard consistently from the City Council that it is their expectation that this be a quality project. In fact, on a number of occasions, again, although the Council very much acknowledges their fiduciary responsibility, they have made it clear, certainly to staff, that having a high-quality project at this location, one that does stand the test of time, was very important to them. The Building Review Board process, the Building Review Board received an introduction to this project, but until there's a site plan in place, a site plan that the City Council has endorsed tentatively, there really is not the ability to move forward on further detailing the buildings, further detailing the exterior materials, and ultimately determining exactly what the building height will be. You do have proposal for 3-story buildings. Those the 3 stories will generally be consistent with the allowable 35-foot height and the buildings in the surrounding area. It really will be a decision about the type of roof that ultimately is approved and desired for these buildings, whether flat roof buildings are really acceptable or whether we do want to see something that really has more character at that location. There was a comment about the recent changes to the plumbing code. That is an issue that has been discussed about every 5 years for about the past 25 years. The City Council raised the issue about 3 years ago, charged us with going to the Construction Codes Commission. Construction Codes Commission has been considering that for a long time. There was tremendous support from the contractors, certainly from the state. The state plumbing code does allow PVC pipe. So that change was made totally unrelated to this project. The change that was made does require additional insulation for plastic pipe that's installed either alongside or above habitable areas. So that is a change. We were one of the few communities that still required cast iron. With respect to the comprehensive plan, I did provide the page from the comprehensive plan to the commission. As was noted, the land use designations that were approved in 1998 call for an open space area in the northeast corner of this property that is provided in this plan through the preservation of Franklin Park. and through preservation of some additional open space along Western Avenue. In addition, there is the preserved area, the preserved park around the oak tree. The designation also identifies the entire site as multifamily. The City Council and the Plan Commission in reviewing the development parameters really moved away from allowing retail development, commercial development, restaurants, or office on the site. They felt that that was incompatible with the surrounding uses and that a residential development was more appropriate. There were some comments about the surrounding streetscapes, and in fact, the City Council has already begun to talk about the opportunity that redevelopment of this site presents. In fact, the City Council could, as part of a future budget discussion in a future year, designate some of the impact fees that the city receives for this site for streetscape enhancements. Those likely will extend further north along the Northwestern Avenue Business District, and certainly consideration should be given to further improvements along Laurel Avenue as well. So that I think that's a suggestion that we will certainly take to the City Council. And then finally, I just want to, one more time, I think we've heard about this project being rushed through. The city did hold community meetings in 2007 and 2008, and the development parameters, the original development parameters, were an outgrowth of those discussions. Certainly the development parameters didn't fully satisfy anybody. I think we hear all the time that a plan or a site plan or policies that don't fully satisfy anybody probably do a good job of striking a good balance. The City Council then in 2012, when they were going to reinitiate this project, asked the Plan Commission again to hold public hearings. Those redevelopment parameters were considered. The City Council has been interviewing various developers and made a selection of Focus, and discussions with Focus have been going on now for about the last 2 years. The Plan Commission first saw this project in December of 2014. You saw it again in March, April, and May, and tonight is the 5th time this matter is before you for your consideration. I think that covers all the points that I heard. I would be happy to address anything I missed.
Fine. Thank you. Let's see here. Petitioner rebuttal.
I'm Tim Anderson. I'm the owner and CEO of Focus Development. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for your time and the time that's been invested in looking at the various proposals and plans that we've placed before you, and thank the public for their input. We understand this is a arduous process, but I think that one of the things I want to say is we went into this to deliver an absolute world-class project. That's certainly been our intent. We've hired Larry Booth Hansen, a world-class architect. We've hired Mariani Lakota as our planner. Mariani is our landscape architect. Black Engineering, who understands Lake Forest and the needs of engineering in Lake Forest. So we've assembled an excellent team. We stand by the plan as it's presented to you tonight. I believe we've been responsive to neighbors' comments all along the way, but we've also put into the context of that the input that we received and the criteria that we received that have been vetted over multiple settings with the council and previous plan commissions when we responded to the RFP. Now, we've tweaked that plan and responded to neighbors' comments, I think, in a responsible manner. I think the Western Connection is a good idea. I think the boulevard and the effect of those things are really strong planning concepts. And I also believe that the amount of open space on this plan, when I say open space, I mean green space, is really a byproduct of an incredible investment we're doing in underground parking. When you take the car and you really relegate the car to the majority of the cars to underground, out of sight, we open up the space of the land plan into large green areas that cannot be accommodated in more traditional planning concepts. And I think that is really the strength of this plan. I think when you also look at the geometry of the site, and you look at it and you say it's a more squarish site, the fact that buildings are at the perimeter and we have an interior green space is a good thing. Sometimes people refer to it as the quadrangle in a negative context. I would disagree with that. I don't think we're not going to landscape it like a quadrangle. We heard that from the community. But we also feel that the interior space is a good space, and it's available with public easements for people to walk through. I think the openings in this plan that we've now done with 3 buildings, where there's an opening at the south end where our ramps go in and we make that an access into the interior. And there is a reciprocal point where the Western Avenue street connection with the boulevard entrance is also an opening into the interior space. And as you look at this, you see the Franklin Park not only creates a larger Franklin Park than we had previously on this site, but it's a throat of a view line into that inner space. So some of the comments we had previously about enclave, quadrangle, I think they've been effectively addressed. But I don't want to back off from what I think is a really quality plan. I was an architect for 10 years before I went into development and construction. And I did that the reason Focus does what we do is we use an integrated model where we have development and construction under one entity, so we can control value, we can control deliverables. When people talked about 3 to 5 years, I would say that 5 years, we all went through 2008. We all went through 2009. We don't know what the for sale market's going to be, but our pro forma is to be done in 2 to 3 years. That's what our pro forma is, and I think we can deliver on that. But we don't know what the market's going to be. We know what we can do with the apartments. We also have a market study which predicts absorption of the for sale product, and we're working on that basis when I give you those years of duration. So we believe in the product, we believe in the design team we've assembled, we believe in this plan, and we also believe that we have financing sources to do the debt on it and to do the equity on it. And we have a track record of producing in North Shore communities. And I think that what we're looking for tonight is for your approval of this plan. So that's really sums it up for me.
Fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would ask that at this point, the commission take a 7-minute recess, come back at, we'll use a clock in the back of the wall which says 8:40, to come back at 8:47, and then we'll go into final questions from the commission to petitioner and staff, and then commission discussion and comment. Okay? We're going to see this again.
I agree.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. Thank you. At this point, I would like to move to the order of business, final questions from the commission to either petitioner or staff. Members of the commission?
I have a question for Kathy. Is it fair to assume, with regards to height, that we're talking about the existing ordinance and then exceptions to the existing 35-foot height would be architectural or enhancements to the design, and that's really what we're talking about? Or is there a greater delta in what's proposed and allowed as opposed to what is going to be architectural or more building review issues than what was presented today?
I think you described it accurately. The code limits height in the central business district to 35 feet. The development parameters, for purposes of achieving an architecturally distinct building or buildings, provided for a variance from that 35-foot height. Now that the buildings are 3 stories, a 3-story building can be accommodated within that height. There is a change of grade on the site. The site overall will need to be leveled, but the building itself theoretically could be close to 35 feet. I'm not sure that is what the council expects or what the building review board expects. So the extension in height really is related to architectural character.
Thank you.
Further questions of petitioner or staff? Okay, seeing none, we will move to commission discussion and comment. And I would like to emphasize here that from this point forward, there'll be no further comments from or questions to the petitioner and so forth. This is time for the commission to deliberate. I can assure you we have not talked about this among ourselves. This will be the first opportunity to do so. And to the assertion that this is a roaring freight train moving fast, I can assure you this is not the case. I'm not sure anybody will believe that, but that's the fact.
I believe it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. I believe it, Mr. Chair. All right. So, and that means no questions of us, no opportunity for petitioner to say anything further at this stage this evening. We have not closed the public hearing on this matter, unless we see if the commission moves one way or the other, pro, con, negative, maybe, whatever. We will decide after, which I hope will be a vote, as to whether we keep the public hearing open or closed. Okay? All right. Members of the commission, your thoughts on what petitioner has presented, what the public testimony has said, what the written testimony has said. Let us know.
Mr. Chairman, as we begin our deliberation, could I ask the petitioner to put up the one image they have that's called density? It happens to show the site as well as the area immediately to the north and the south of Franklin and Laurel. I think that might be a useful image. Thank you. Should I continue?
Sure.
And
Who would
as
like to go
we-
second?
Go ahead.
Well, fellow commissioners, as we've been through a number of these meetings, that they don't seem like they were an express train whatsoever, and we've gotten a lot of input from everybody. I think these last developments, these last revisions and changes actually are interesting, and the site plan here actually is something that really kind of resonates with me because it shows some of the strengths of the revised plan. I mean, we have reference, of course, to the quadrangle as a negative thing, and then I just direct someone to go to Market Square and try to get away with saying that that's a barracks. The open space in the center is the real value and lifeblood of that, and I think that we have that going on here. In fact, if you looked at the development to the north with that rather haphazard dropping into the buildings, it's kind of like a little bit of a junkyard for object buildings. And the stuff on the south of Laurel is shoehorned in on such narrow lots that I just pity the people that live there. I've looked and driven down those little driveways, and I don't know how that really got through the city. So I think that the current development is much better than those two. And I think the proximity to downtown with apartments is actually something the city council has directed us to consider, and I think that there's a market for it. I think that the introduction of the boulevard to that road is actually, in the final analysis, will probably produce a community amenity, and in the process, we got rid of the apartment amenities of the pool and the clubhouse, which I think in the long run, from a marketing standpoint, will only help in Lake Forest. If anything, I really think that from a planning standpoint, I think we get to the point where we try to appease everybody and their wants and desires. I think if that road were to go through all the way to Franklin and be tree-lined with a sidewalk, it would be a smashing place to go. I know when I go to the grill to eat dinner, I would go for a walk down that lane after I got done, just because it would be so pleasant. So I really think we ought to strongly consider staff's recommendation that they find a way to extend that through. And I'd like to see Franklin Place stay there as well. So if there's some way they can manipulate the site to do that, it would be, I think, ideal. I think that they've also listened to the concerns about the building heights as well as the building lengths, because I know myself, I mentioned in the last meeting, could they possibly break this into smaller buildings? And they did. So the comments that they're not listening to us or that we're somehow remiss in our duties is actually kind of offensive, but I guess that's just the way people get in these public forums. But I trust with Larry Booth, who is an award-winning architect. He's not just locally well-renowned, but he's also nationally a figure. We have one of the most stringent building department reviews in the country. And I think between Larry Booth and our building department plan reviewers, there will not be any shoddy buildings going up here. With regard to elevations, massing, and height, I would say that with what we may make a motion on here tonight, that if it does get approved, we strongly recommend that Building Review Board take those items into consideration. I may have some more comments, but I'm going to let the other commissioners talk.
Lloyd?
Mr. Chairman, I enter every petition with the approach that I want to figure out a way to say yes and work with petitioner and neighbors, board members, and staff to get to an answer yes. But I'm not there tonight. My visceral sense is that this is not the right plan for this space. Over the course of the deliberations, we've reviewed the footprint and layout of these buildings, and there's been some changes, no question about it, but the fundamental nature of these building footprints and the layout of the buildings themselves remains pretty much the same as it was at the beginning. I guess I was hoping that the petitioner would come back with something a little more transformational. I reflect on our experience with Lake Forest Hospital, their original proposal was a skyscraper medical building on the west side of the campus, and they listened to the public and to the commission, and they came back with a horizontal structure on the east side of the campus. A total transformation from where they had started. The end result, I thought, was superb. I would encourage that kind of transformational thinking with respect to this site. And it's not just the building footprints that I have a problem with, it's the circulation, both vehicular and pedestrian. I am too still remain troubled by the building height. I also, I heard the term monotony of design. I would like to see a little more variety, a little more gravitas to the design of these structures. I feel that's befitting of Lake Forest and its legacy of architecture. Regarding the absence of elevations in this petition presentation, I personally feel that depictions of architectural aspects are helpful and integral in deciding on the merits of a site plan. I don't think you can just draw lines on the ground and leave the building design to someone else. I think it has to be considered in context, so I would prefer to see the architectural elevations presented. With respect to density, even the plan put forward by a subset of neighbors, which by no means had unanimous agreement, acknowledged densities that weren't too far off from what Focus has presented. So I think there is at least some recognition that not only will this site be developed, and should be, but there is probably a density level required to ensure financial viability of a project. And finally, you know, on density, you could cut the density in half and still have a bad plan. Cutting density is not going to justify a plan. Conversely, an elegant plan could actually justify higher levels of density, in my opinion. So, in closing, I really appreciate the hard work put in by the petitioner, City Council, City staff, us, we, the commissioners, and the neighbors. None of us are, we're all taking this very seriously and trying to be very careful and thoughtful in our deliberation. Again, I want to be able to say yes at some point, but at this point in time, with respect to this legacy location, I believe that it deserves a site plan and an architectural design that's more commensurate with the character of Lake Forest. So I will vote against the petition as it stands.
Thank you. Tim?
I have general agreement with Lloyd's comments. I think what makes the process seem a little bit arduous is that since the comprehensive plan was developed and since even the RFP was sent to the petitioner, the world has changed dramatically. And I think that can touch on many different aspects of looking at this plan and what our challenge is in reviewing it. I agree with many of Lloyd and Guy's comments, and I think there's been great progress made. Maybe not as architecturally, but in responding to the comments and still trying to maximize the potential to the site. It's not lost on me, and I've mentioned it many times, that the overriding deal with regards to the plan still comes down to what Ms. Kolb was calling market dynamics. And the challenge that I have with this plan, in addition to some of the things we've talked about, is that with 110 apartment buildings, I'm stumped on how we're going to get even close to the projected prices for the ownership units. My biggest problem with the plan is with this number of units, again, which are easily financed, most easily built, with a 5-year timeline to develop it, the risk of selling the ownership units is overwhelming relative to what the apartment, number of apartment units there are. I think I've asked pretty clearly and presented to the petitioner my concern about, can we get some comps? And the comps were, there are none, is the challenge. And my continued problem with the plan is that market dynamic on how do we, as proposed, make it work 4 years from now? How do you sell close to $1 million single-family home unit when you got 110 rental units at Western Laurel and Lake Forest? I think it's a tremendous challenge, and therefore I find the plan very hard to approve on that point.
Okay. Well, as a resident of the Third Ward, I really view this proposed project, as an important project for the city as a whole, and especially for the improved health of our downtown. We all know of the struggles that it faces, but the thing that strikes me about Lake Forest is this would be a shot in the arm for our downtown without using public money. By that is to say, going to the federal government that doesn't have any money for grants, going to the state for money that doesn't have any money. Here is a plan that is financed by, in effect, the private sector through the acquisition of a city-owned property. I'd like to comment, too, on the statement that we heard several times during these proceedings. This is going to cost the city $31 million in borrowing and is too risky. Checking the record of the documentation that's open for public view shows that not a true statement. The city is not going to borrow $31 million, as Kathy said. The city is not going to be the financier of either the apartment buildings or the single-family homes. And to the assertion that saying it's too risky, I saw a quote by an architectural critic in Sunday's paper, and I think it just struck me as being true. He said, cities that don't seize upon opportunities like this are sacrificing their future on the altar of excessive caution. And that's what I view some of the skepticism. There's risks associated with everything we do as citizens, especially with our personal portfolios. To insist on no risk is to not invest and to see our capital eroded through inflation. So I think that, this commission is not considering the financial feasibility of this at all. As a matter of fact, someone asserted that certain members of the commission went to a public meeting of the Public Properties Committee. We were not told to get in line. We were told just the reverse. We were told to come up with a best plan for Lake Forest, irrespective of the financial thing. So this is not about the money. Now, let me talk to a couple of points as to how this fits in with the city's plans. We've talked about the comprehensive plan, so I won't repeat this. But the city adopted a strategic plan 2 years ago, the 2013 to 18 strategic plan. It called for three things, among many others. And that is for residential units of various types, including rental apartments in areas near businesses. That's the expressed will of our self-governing system. And also, it talks about how to do things that determine how Lake Forest remains relevant to a younger generation. That says everything to me, and that we really got to have vibrancy in our downtown, because if we don't have vibrancy in our downtown, then you're going to see a call for public financing of urban renewal. To me, the market study is very compelling and convincing that this project will build out, barring any repetition of 2008 through 2011. That's possible, I suppose. Any shock to our economic system could cause that again. But to not move forward, just to sit on the land saying, uncertainty, we should do nothing, I don't think is. So for those reasons and others, the main one of which, we heard about the slides that we saw about Glenview. That's not what we're talking about here in Lake Forest. I'm confident that the Building Review Board, which is staffed by Kathy, and has citizens of this community who are as interested in what goes up here, if anything, as you are, that they will do their job and come up with a project that conforms with historic legacies of Lake Forest and also called the Lake Forest style. And remember, what this is before us is not final approval by any stretch of the imagination. It's one step in the process. It's a tentative approval of a plat of subdivision and tentative approval of a redevelopment plan for the 10-acre parcel. It's got to go before the BRB, should the city council think it should do so. If we vote on this and it goes forward to the city council, and it's my hope that it will go before the city council, I think we've gummed this one to death. I really do. And that it's got to go to BRB. The city council could send it back to us and say, start over from scratch if they chose. They could say, let's go to BRB. The reason we don't have elevations and drawings is the petitioner needs some comfort that it doesn't go to great expense to prepare drawings that people continue to say, oh, we don't like it. So it'll go, this is preliminary, it's tentative approval. It's got to go to the city council. The city council has to decide, go, stop, back up. They then would send it to BRB, go through that process. And if it goes, then it'll go for final engineering. This is hardly a freight train. I applaud and sincerely appreciate the patience of the petitioner on this. It has taken 6 months so far. Going through BRB and so forth, I think we'll get a product here that Lake Forest will be proud of. I really do. I have full faith and confidence in BRB. They'll have public hearings on the matter, opportunity for input. They'll see the public record. And so I would vote tonight that we move this project forward.
The vote is 2-2.
A vote hasn't been taken yet.
Well, take it.
Any further comment?
I guess I would just maybe get you some of your comments on my point about the relative number of rental units to the ability to sell the condos and single-family homes. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that doesn't matter? Do you think that the single-family homes will sell regardless of the number of apartment units? You don't think it's that important to the plan? What do you think?
Well, I actually think that the single-family homes have been aided by the tree line boulevard element that we put in there, and I made mention of that on a number of occasions. I think that helps, just as the houses around this will sell and continue to sell, and they sell right in the backside of Crystal Point. I mean, those houses don't cease to exist just because they're behind it. So I think that with regard to those things, they'll probably get gobbled up, I would sense. And I think that the placement of the one road internally east-west, I think introduces a public domain aspect to that central space that I was very apprehensive about in previous meetings. In fact, from the very first meeting, I think I was lobbying that we do that. And I think that that makes a big difference because it starts to introduce the public, and I think that helps. So I feel confident that that's going to actually work. The two condominium buildings are along this tree line boulevard as well. And I think that that kind of organizing spine, that's one reason why I want it so desperately to go through. In fact, I almost feel that if it doesn't go through, I wouldn't support it. I think it's important for the marketability. All my comments actually that I've been making for the past month and a half have had as much to do with marketability as quality of environment, because they actually go hand in hand. That's why Market Square gets so much rent per foot as opposed to something on the next block.
Chairman, is this a filibuster?
No comments, sir. Remember, I asked at the beginning that we were going to take no comments. I wish for you to appreciate that we're deliberating among ourselves. Go ahead.
So that was my sentiment about that. So I think it's improved it. But I respect your concerns.
Okay.
Well, at this point, I wonder if we owe it to the petitioner to make a motion and take some kind of a vote this evening. Is that? And I would say that that we actually, I'd like to move that we try to vote in support of the tentative plan. We have some staff recommendations, and I'd like to include those as well, and modify the tentative plan and site plan to reflect the extension of North-South Road to Franklin, a north-south pedestrian connection from Franklin to Laurel, and a land-banked area for future parking. Also, I'd like to have the conditions that they submit architectural plans, landscape plans, lighting plans to the Building Review Board for review and consideration. There should be sections reflecting the overall proposed building heights from the point of lowest adjacent grade to the highest roof peak, and the heights of building elements in between should be provided as well. And I would also like to see details of the treatment of the perimeter of the site, including but not limited to grade changes, landscaping, and hardscaping as well. And also, too, with tentative approval, if City Council sees fit to approve our recommendation, there would be the submittal and a great deal of submittal of engineering plans, et cetera, is listed in our staff recommendation as well. Does anyone second that?
I'll second it to get it before us.
Did that include the road going through to Franklin?
Well, actually, one of the very first things, Lloyd, in the staff recommendation would be the modification of the tentative plat and site plan to reflect the extension of the north-south road through to Franklin, so that is in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I would, to my fellow commissioners, I would hope that we could approve this motion. I'd like to make one last comment about the architectural plan of the so-called alternative plan. I neglected to mention that, but there are no specific building heights in that plan. And yet it's held up as an alternative. But the major problem, frankly, that I have with it, is the buildings are too close together, simply put, where a good share of the residents look out their windows and see either a neighbor's windows or a close exterior wall of an adjoining building. So I think that the plan that we have before us may not be the one that we end up with, but I think that that the alternative, so-called alternative plan was, a lot of the features were considered and incorporated, and we heard that in the testimony tonight. And I applaud those who said so, their fairness and objectivity on that point. So if you're ready for a vote on the motion, I would, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Henry?
Nay.
Commissioner Berg?
Yes.
Commissioner Culbertson?
Nay.
Chairman Lay?
Aye.
Vote is 2-2.
2 ayes, 2 noes. The matter will be forwarded to the City Council with a 2-2 vote. I was hoping that our fifth member, who's on the commission, would have been here tonight to break that tie. Unfortunately, he wasn't. And so it will go forward to the city council on a 2-2 vote.
Sir, you have 7 people on the commission. What's the rules on having a quorum?
Sir,
How about a motion to,
let me respond to that. It's an important question.
It is.
Because we've had 2 commissioners resign in the last 6 weeks. Because of business commitments, they couldn't be here.
You can't vote on this. You gotta get the commission filled.
We can vote on it, sir, and we will. I'll call the,
why are we talking about the people in the audience? Let's go.
we had a quorum. This is a legal vote.
I'd like to move to adjourn, Mr. Commissioner.
Second?
I second that, yeah.
Wow.